I drove 3 hours to clean my mom's hoarder basement. Then my sister said I should pay the bills too. Hi, I'm Marcus, 34, and I learned last month that my family only sees me as useful when I'm useful to them. It started with a phone call from my sister, Jen. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, maybe months. She opened with the usual fake casual, "Hey, how's my favorite big brother?" before launching into the real reason. "So, Mom's thinking of selling the house, but she's overwhelmed. Can you come down for a few days to help sort everything?" What she meant was, "We need free labor and you're the responsible one." I should have said no. I really should have. I had a product launch coming up at work, my boss was breathing down my neck, and I lived 3 hours away in Philly. But the guilt reflex kicked in. My brain short-circuited into old patterns. She's your mom, it's just a few days, you'll be back before Monday. So I packed a bag, loaded the car, and drove back to that creaky old house in suburban Jersey. The second I stepped through the door, it all came rushing back. The musty smell of the foyer rug, the scratched banister I fell down as a kid, the photo wall full of smiling faces who, ironically, only smiled when I was fixing something for them. Mom greeted me with a look that was 70% stress and 30% relief. She hugged me with one arm while still holding her phone in the other, mid-text. "Thank God you're here, Marcus. The basement's a disaster. Your sister and I tried, but you know how bad my back's been." Translation: we glanced at it for 10 minutes and decided it was your problem now. Jen showed up 2 hours later with Starbucks for herself and none for me. "Oh shoot, I didn't know you'd be here already," she said, like she literally begged me to come. Then she tossed your purse on the kitchen table, sat on her phone for 45 minutes, and disappeared upstairs to sort her old yearbooks, which somehow took 5 hours. Meanwhile, I was downstairs swimming through decades of family hoarding, boxes stacked to the ceiling, old furniture, rusted bikes. At one point, I found a crate labeled Holiday Lights 1998 that was 80% tangled cords and 20% dead spiders. It would have been fine if this were just about the stuff, but every time I tried to throw something out, like the broken lamp with no bulb and half a shade, Mom appeared behind me like a ghost. "Oh wait, I think that might have been your dad's," which he left 17 years ago. It wasn't. By Saturday night, I was covered in dust and resentment, shoveling emotional debris no one else had the stomach for. Jen was on the porch talking about her divorce like it was a TED Talk. Mom was in the living room pretending to look at real estate listings, but really refreshing Facebook. Nobody said thank you. Not once. I was halfway through dragging a busted filing cabinet to the curb when Jen looked up from her phone and casually said, "By the way, if you could help Mom out a little with bills this month, she's been struggling." I stopped, dead. "What?" "You know," she shrugged, "groceries, utilities, that sort of thing. I mean, you don't have kids or a mortgage." I stared at her, at Mom, at the house, at the lifetime of quiet sacrifices I'd made, and something cracked open in my chest. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clean. I said, "Okay," but I didn't mean I'll help. I meant I'm done. The next morning, I left before either of them was awake. No note, no dramatic speech, just loaded my car and drove back to Philly, radio off, my jaw clenched so tight it felt wired shut. I was halfway down the turnpike when the first text came in from Jen. Jen: "Hey, where'd you go? Thought we were going to hit up that diner today." Then Mom: "Marcus, I really need to know where we left the tax folder, the one with the green tab. Call me." I didn't answer either. Instead, I walked into my apartment, dumped my bag, and stood in the kitchen in that rare kind of silence where even your thoughts take a breath. I had spent the entire weekend busting my back for people who couldn't be bothered to make me a cup of coffee. And now they wanted me to cover their bills? Like I was some kind of financial airbag that just inflated whenever life hit too hard. By Tuesday, they had figured out I wasn't just being grumpy. That's when the guilt barrage started. Mom: "I don't understand this attitude. We're family. I thought you were raised better than this." Jen: "We're all going through stuff, Marcus. You don't have to make everything about money." They still didn't get it. This wasn't about money.
This was about the quiet, exhausting, invisible labor they'd built their comfort on, and how fast they panicked the second I stopped doing it. Over the next week, I watched their texts morph like clockwork. Denial. You're overreacting. Guilt. You know mom's not well. Bargaining. Maybe we can all sit down and talk. I'll cook. Anger. You think you're better than us just because you live in the city? Desperation. The electric bill's late. They're going to shut it off. Please, Marcus. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I opened a Google sheet and titled it, Things I've Paid For Since Dad Left. I started from age 16. School supplies, the second car battery when Mom's Civic died, Jen's phone bill that one time, her rent, her second rent, her laptop, groceries during the pandemic, Mom's furnace, the fridge, the plumber when the basement flooded, the time I canceled a vacation to cover her insurance deductible. Line by line, I built a record they couldn't argue with. $50 here, $200 there, thousands over the years. And I realized something I had never quite let myself admit. They didn't depend on me. They used me because it was easier than changing. And maybe, just maybe, that's what this was really about. Not money, not stuff, but what happens when the one person you count on to clean up your mess finally stands up, puts down the broom and says, "Clean it yourselves." It finally boiled over on a Wednesday night. I was mid-call with a client, walking them through a prototype, when my phone started buzzing. 10 times in a row. I silenced it, kept talking, but when I hung up and checked my screen, I saw 15 missed calls. Mostly Mom, 3 from Jen, 1 from an unknown number. Then the texts lit up. Mom, Marcus, it's an emergency. Please call me. Jen, he's freaking out. He broke a lamp. I don't know what to do. The unknown number texted next. This is Eric. I'm a neighbor. Your mom said to contact you. Something's going on with your sister. My stomach sank. I hesitated, heart pounding, then hit call. Mom answered in a shaky voice. Oh, thank God. Marcus, I'm sorry. I know you're mad, but Jen's having a breakdown. She smashed a lamp. She locked herself in the bathroom. She's saying all this stuff. I don't know what to do. I asked, did you call anyone? Like who? A doctor? A crisis line? Anyone qualified to handle it? Silence. Then, well, I called you. Of course she did, because even in a genuine crisis, her first move was to hand it to me. I pressed my fingers to my eyes. Mom, I can't fix this. I'm not a therapist. I'm not an EMT. I'm your son, and I'm not driving 3 hours to play emergency stand-in just because nobody else has learned to function. You're really going to let your sister sit in there like that after everything? I cut her off. I'm not letting anything happen. You are, because you've built a system where I'm the only adult in the room. She started crying, loud, panicked. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just told her exactly what she needed to do, step by step. Who to call, what to say. I even Googled the local crisis line and texted her the number. Then I said, you can handle this. I believe you can, but this is your moment to prove it. And I hung up. For 10 minutes, I just sat there, staring at the quiet of my apartment. And then, to my shock, I got a follow-up. Not from Mom, from Jen. Jen, I'm okay. They're sending someone. I'm scared, but thank you for not coming. I think maybe I needed this to not be easy. That hit harder than any guilt trip ever could.
She wasn't mad. She was grateful, because for once, I hadn't been her shortcut. That night, I poured myself a drink, opened my laptop, and looked again at the spreadsheet titled Things I've Paid For. Only this time, I opened a new tab right next to it, Things I'm no longer paying for, and I started writing. The first entry I typed into that new sheet was simple. 1. Their peace of mind at the cost of mine. It was oddly satisfying. Not angry, not even petty, just honest. The next one came faster. 2. Being the family IT guy, plumber, therapist, and accountant without pay. By number 6, I was typing without thinking. 6. Spotting them rent when I barely see my own. 7.
fixing problems they created, ignored, or forgot about. 8. Letting guilt decide how I spend my time. I stared at the list for a long time, not to feed resentment, but to finally name it. All my life, I had confused boundaries with betrayal. Every time I tried to say no, that little voice in my head whispered, "You're abandoning them. They need you. You're all they've got." But sitting there, rereading Jen's message, it hit me. They could do it without me. They just never had to. Until now. A few days later, Mom called again. This time, not in a panic. Her voice was quieter, like she'd just stepped outside. "I wanted to say thank you," she said. I almost dropped my phone. "For what?" "For not coming," she said slowly. "I didn't get it at first. I thought you were being cruel. But after the woman from the hotline came and Jen calmed down, I realized I was doing it again." She paused. "I always run to you because I know you'll show up. I don't even stop to think if I should ask." That was the first time she'd ever said something like that. I didn't interrupt. She kept going. "You're right. We built this whole system where you're the backup plan for everything. I don't know how to undo that overnight, but I want to try." I swallowed. "Trying's enough," I said. She asked if we could meet halfway, literally, some diner off the highway between Philly and Jersey. I agreed, reluctantly, not out of duty this time, curiosity. When I got there, she was already seated with 2 coffees on the table. We didn't talk about money, or Jen, or the house. We talked about me, my work, my apartment, what I'd been building without them knowing. Halfway through my eggs, she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "Don't worry," she said. "It's not another crisis." Inside was a folded piece of paper, handwritten, a list. It was titled, "Things I Took for Granted." My name was at the top, and below it, groceries, rides, late-night advice, the furnace, the laptop, that Thanksgiving when you forgot to cook and you showed up with catering like it was no big deal. She looked away, embarrassed. "I figured you kept lists. I should start keeping mine." I didn't cry, but something old and angry in me exhaled for the first time in years. It wasn't everything. It wasn't a fix. But it was a start. A few weeks passed, quietly. Jen started texting me small things, not demands, not guilt-laced hints, actual updates. "Jen, I had my 3rd therapy session today. I didn't bail this time." "Jen, do you remember that diner we used to go to with Dad? It's still there. I went, sat alone, didn't cry, much." She was changing, slowly, unevenly, but something had cracked open in her too. She even sent a photo once, her in a ratty apron holding a tray of food at some local bar and grill. "Jen, part-time gig. It sucks, but the tips are decent. I haven't thrown a plate at anyone yet. Growth?" It felt surreal. The same sister who used to roll her eyes when I mentioned being responsible was now earning her own money, 1 basket of fries at a time. And Mom? She emailed me a Google Doc. That alone almost gave me a stroke. Mom's monthly budget.xlsx. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. Mortgage, electric, groceries, gas. There was even a color-coded column labeled, "Do not put on Marcus's card." I almost laughed. Then I almost cried. It wasn't perfect, nothing was, but it was proof. Proof that they were starting to understand what I had tried to say all along. Help doesn't mean sacrifice. Love doesn't mean silence. And support doesn't mean bankrupting yourself, financially, emotionally, or otherwise. Back in Philly, my own life was finally expanding into the space I'd fought for. I started leaving my apartment more, reconnected with friends I've been too drained to keep up with, said yes to a weekend hiking trip in the Catskills, said no to a client who tried to call me on a Sunday, and one afternoon, I was sitting in my apartment when I heard a knock. Not the buzzer, a knock. I opened the door to find Jen, standing there with a duffel bag, wind-blown and slightly sweaty. "Before you freak out," she said quickly, "I'm not moving in." I blinked. "Okay. I just wanted to see it. Your place. the life you've built that you kept so damn quiet about. I let her in. She did a slow circle in my tiny living room, nodding like she was inspecting a museum exhibit. "This is nice," she said. "Feels like you." Then she sat on the couch and looked at me. "I owe you an apology." "You kinda do." She laughed. "Okay, don't be smug about it." I sat across from her, waiting. Jen picked at a thread on her sleeve. "I thought you were just uptight, controlling. I didn't get it. All the lists, the planning, the way you never let anything drop. I didn't do it to be a martyr. I did it because no one else would. I know that now, but I used to think Marcus will handle it. He always does. You were the adult in every room, and we acted like that was just your personality, like you wanted to be in charge all the time." She looked up. "That wasn't fair." I swallowed hard. "No, it wasn't." She reached into her bag and pulled out a crumpled envelope. Inside was $60 in cash and a sticky note. "For the TikTok course. I never finished it. You knew I wouldn't. I'm sorry." I held it in my hand for a long second. "This doesn't make us even," I said. "I know," she said, "but it makes us honest." And it did. I didn't cash the money. I pinned the note to my corkboard above my desk, right next to a print I'd designed that said, "Boundaries are bridges, not walls." Because somewhere along the way, that's what had changed. I hadn't cut them off. I'd taught them how to reach me without dragging me under. About a month later, I got an unexpected invitation. An actual paper card slipped into my mailbox like something from another decade. "Dinner at Mom's, Sunday, 6 p.m. No agenda, just food." At the bottom, in Jen's handwriting, "Promise we're not about to ask for money. Swear on Mom's overcooked lasagna." I almost didn't go. Part of me still tensed at the thought of stepping back into that house. I pictured the fridge where my list still hung, probably curling at the edges. I remembered the night I left with that U-Haul, the look on Mom's face like the floor had dropped out from under her. But another part of me, the one that wasn't exhausted anymore, was curious. Curious to see what it looked like when they didn't expect me to fix anything. So I went. And to my surprise, the house looked lived in. But not in the chaotic waiting for Marcus to come handle it way. There was clutter, sure, a stack of unopened mail on the counter, a bulb flickering in the hallway that clearly needed replacing, but no one was panicking about it. Mom answered the door wearing an apron, hair up, and for the first time in what felt like years, she didn't open with a complaint or question. Just, "Hi, honey, I'm glad you came." Inside, Jen was already setting the table. She waved a spatula at me like a greeting. "Lasagna's probably burned, but I didn't ask you to Venmo me for better cheese, so you're welcome." Dinner was weird. Weird in the way things are when people are trying hard not to screw them up.
Conversations skated across safe topics. TV shows, someone Mom ran into at the store, Jen's terrible customers at work. But under it all, there was something else. Effort. Real, conscious effort not to fall back into old rhythms. No jabs, no guilt trips, no, "Can you just..." At one point, Jen got up to refill her glass and bumped the corner of the table, sending her fork clattering to the floor. Old Jen would have cursed, blamed the table, probably thrown the fork away. Instead, she picked it up, rinsed it off, and laughed. "I'm evolving," she said. "Personal growth looks like not launching cutlery across the room." And then, something I never thought I'd hear. "I've been setting alarms early, like 7 a.m. early. I hate it, but it's weirdly stabilizing. I feel like a person who might actually get her deposit back someday." I raised my glass. "To not getting evicted." Mom chimed in. "To not emotionally evicting your brother every time something breaks." We all laughed. It wasn't perfect. The lasagna was dry, the wine was cheap, and the house still had the same draft it always did. But for once, I wasn't there as the family's emergency service hotline. I was just there. And maybe the wildest part? They didn't need me. Not in that old, heavy, sinking way. Jen had found footing. Mom was still learning, still overwhelmed, but owning her part. And I felt lighter. Like the scaffolding I'd spent my whole life holding up was finally getting some new hands on it.
hands that knew they couldn't keep calling me every time a bean cracked. That dinner didn't solve everything, but it proved something I hadn't dared hope for when I left. They were capable of change, of growth, of being more than just the people who used me when things went wrong, and I was capable of loving them without losing myself in the process. 2 days after that dinner, Jen sent me a screenshot. It was her paycheck. Not a huge one, maybe $380 after taxes, but the caption under it read, "First check I haven't immediately spent on delivery or sneakers. Gonna open a savings account. Like an adult. God help me." I laughed out loud in my kitchen. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I forwarded the text to a friend. Not to vent, not to complain, just to say, look, she's trying. Because for once, I wasn't ashamed of them. I was proud. Later that week, I called Mom, not because she needed something, but because I wanted to. She picked up on the second ring, breathless. "I was just checking coupons," she said. "I'm turning into that lady at the register who makes people groan, but hey, $1.50 off almond milk is $1.50. I grinned. "Look at you budgeting." She hesitated. "I still mess up, a lot. There are days I catch myself almost texting you about some bill or login I can't find. Then I stop. I think, can I actually fix this without him? And most of the time, I can. Good. That's the whole point." Then she asked something that caught me off guard. "Are you happy, Marcus?" I paused, because no one in my family had ever really asked me that. Not with it being code for, "Are you still useful to us?" But this felt different. I thought about it. About my quiet mornings, my evening walks, my weirdly satisfying little apartment with the rug I picked out myself. "I think I am," said I. "Not perfect, not every day, but I feel like I'm finally living my own life instead of just managing everyone else's." She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "I'm glad. I'm sorry it took us losing you to realize what we were doing. I didn't lose you. You just finally learned where I end and you begin." We hung up soon after. No drama, no disaster. And that silence, the kind that used to be heavy, felt like peace this time. That night I stood at my window, watching the streetlights flicker on. A couple was arguing over pizza across the road. Someone was hauling groceries up the stairs. Life just moved. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel buried underneath it all. I was just another person in a city full of people figuring things out. And I was doing okay. Really, truly okay. 6 months later, Jen called me from a job site. Not a bar, not a kitchen, a legit construction site. She was wearing a hard hat, sweating through her shirt, and grinning like she'd won the lottery. "They're training me on drywall today," she said. "Apparently, I have a good eye for clean seams, whatever that means." I laughed. "It means you've officially joined the boring, competent adult club." "Damn right I have," she said. "Also, I paid Mom back for the internet bill. Full amount. She nearly fainted." That part hit me. Not the money, the gesture. It wasn't just about bills anymore. It was about ownership, effort, change. Mom had found a rhythm too. Still working, still stretching every dollar, but the fridge magnets were now coupons, not unpaid notices. The budget spreadsheet had color-coded tabs. And my name wasn't on a single one. The last time I visited, she offered me coffee with almond milk she'd gotten on sale and casually mentioned she'd started therapy. "Just once a month," she said, stirring her mug, "but it's helping. I talk a lot about how I leaned on you too much." I looked at her. She wasn't perfect. She never would be. But she was trying to stand without leaning, and that mattered. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at my desk, the one I bought myself, in a chair no one else had ever sat in, and opened my old spreadsheet, things I'm no longer paying for. I scrolled to the bottom and added one last line, being the only one who grows. Then I closed the file, not because the work was done, but because, for once, it wasn't all on me anymore.